This morning's Coffee With is with Chris Hanson.
And the satellite interview is furnished by Investigation Discovery. Chris Hanson, welcome to WJZ, Baltimore in the Morning Edition. Again, we're happy to have you on board. What's up?
Great to be here, guys.
Killer Instinct. See, let me see, we did this season 1, season 2, now season 3.
Well, season 3, as much as I love the first 2 seasons, is just so far and ahead of what we've done before. You know, this team that we've assembled is so good at finding these stories, which are, you know, murders that didn't get a lot of coverage at the time, or murders that did get a lot of coverage where people are speaking out for the first time. But what we do is we get inside these stories. I don't have a studio for the show. The field is my studio. So we take people inside the investigations. They see things they wouldn't normally see. They hear things they wouldn't normally hear. And when you get into the mind of a criminal and you hear the voice of a victim, honestly, guys, I think we can prevent other people from becoming victims, and that's a big part of what we do on the show.
So give us an example, one of the compelling stories that you cover this season.
Well, the next show that we have coming up on Tuesday, 9 Eastern, is the story of Susanna Chase, who is a University of Colorado Boulder co-ed who was murdered brutally just 50 feet from her home after leaving the graduation party for her boyfriend right there in Boulder. And I don't know if you've been to Boulder, but it's, you know, this quiet, peaceful, wonderful college town. And everybody's outdoors, and there's no crime there. I mean, it was this case and JonBenet Ramsey, are, you know, the 2 big cases in the last 20-some years. So who did it? Was it the boyfriend? Was it a stranger? This case went unsolved for 10 years, and it wasn't until these detectives who stayed on this case for all those years were able to get some new developments in DNA technology. The perpetrator was clipped for another crime, and because they were vigilant, because they kept on this thing for 10 years, they wouldn't retire until they solved this case. They finally got a break that resolved this case.
You know what's the most interesting thing about what you just said, the cases you'll discuss on Killer Instinct, and news stories that we have done here at WJZ. There are a lot of police that just simply will not give up. We just had the 2 little girls in Wheaton, Maryland.
They disappeared, Sheila Lyons and her sister, yes, and a man just 42 years later pleaded guilty.
But there was a cop that would not let this case go cold. Some of these guys...
Well, that's one of the most fascinating parts of these investigations. As you mentioned, you know, every town, Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, and we go to all these cities to cover these cases, but if these guys didn't stick with it, and many of them, in our cases, stay with these investigations even after they retire, they get brought back in, they wouldn't get solved. And that's why we honor the dedication that these detectives have to law enforcement.
You've talked about how there are so many cases you can delve into. Every time you meet a detective, they bring you 3 more cases that you could investigate for the show.
That's exactly right. Every time I sit down with a detective or a district attorney or a victim's family, you walk away with 3 more stories. And so it's never ending, sadly, that there are that many crimes across the country. But I think if you get in the mind of a criminal and you hear the voice of the victim, as I said, you know, you can prevent other people from becoming victims.
Do you find with social media that you and law enforcement get more leads?
I think so. I think both on Killer Instinct and my other show, Crime Watch Daily, the social media presence is critical because we get leads on stories. We get leads on stories that may be soon solved, and it allows us to get in, you know, behind the scenes and tell the story even better. But in Killer Instinct, you know, what makes these things so compelling, I think, is that when you combine the interviews that we do in the field with these dramatic recreations that my very talented director of photography puts together, they're really like mini motion pictures. So we're showing people something they can't find anywhere else.
Chris, Killer Instinct. It's always good to have you on Investigation Discovery, and hopefully we'll see you at the beginning of your season number 4. There's certainly enough
Marty, thank you very much.
Subject matter to work with.
Absolutely.
Thanks
for having me.
You're welcome.
No problem.